1964 saw the opening of the Liverpool Botanic Gardens. Over 36,000 square feet of glass, costing £100,000, and home for more than 10,000 exotic plants. The fame of Merseyside's music scene was spreading all over the world. Something special was happening in the city. It was a time of such great change that it left an indelible mark on the entire century.
In the 60s, the Beatles weren't the only young people in Liverpool, of course. The city was throbbing with what's now called a youth culture. We didn't know it was a youth culture then. We were just part of it. And everybody wanted to be a Beatle. And I don't know how many groups there were in Liverpool in the 60s, but I know that it runs into hundreds. Everybody wanted to be a Beatle. Everybody wanted to be in a band. And most people were. And it didn't really matter whether you could play or not. That wasn't the point. You were in a band, you were connected with the scene in some way. I mean, if you couldn't play in a band, you'd go and you'd listen to a band. You could walk around the city centre in Liverpool, you could walk down Dale Street, go down Temple Lane, Temple Street, and the sounds coming out of the clubs, it was quite unbelievable, because it wasn't disco music, they were live bands. It was young people in Liverpool being creative. You could be on Lime Street, and it was commonplace to see young people coming out of Lime Street Station, not young Scousers, but young people from other parts of the country, from Edinburgh, from Carlisle, from Newcastle, from Colchester, from Southend, and all they wanted to do was be in Liverpool and hear the Liverpool accent. In fact, when I look back now, that trip that they made from all over Britain to Liverpool in the 60s, really, it was kind of a holy pilgrimage.
I was what you call a canard yank years ago, in the 60s, early 60s, when we just come down and, you know, point liners deliver down to the bar. We used to pick the pilot up. The first guy on board was the pilot. Then you get down as far as the bar. You may be in rough seas, you couldn't come into delivery, you had to wait until the tide went out or whatever. And then we get the next person on board was your customs men. Well, my father, my brother always comes to meet me on docking day, because they always dock a bottle there and a couple of packets of ciggies, whatever it was. They was guaranteed they'd be on before the custom fellas. How they done it, I'll never know. They always seem to do it to get there, no matter what time, in the morning, afternoon, night. Any time at all, they were on board that shift. Like I said, as soon as we get time off the shift, we'll get ashore and get down the pier head. We'll go to the dive, the dart, the Spanish house, there's another one called the Long Round the Back. The Casey's, we say they had in Casey Street. They were all our locals. One thing about the town, if you run out of money, but you wouldn't run out of a pint. Because the lads were all sound, all Scousers, they're all good lads. And even the barman, you know you'd come back, you'd have a few bob. You'd be in their position one day and you'd look after them. So you'd always got a pint in town, like, you know, so that was our boozers.
This is Temple Street, where the other famous underground Liverpool cellar, the Iron Door Club, was. Many, many years ago, other famous bands, like Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, Neil Preston and the TTs, Cass and the Casanovas, which became the Big Three, all played in this cellar. And at the time, 1961, they held auditions for groups to go to France on the American bases. Everybody had to have Gale singers. And it was just a general raving place, all-night sessions, lunchtime sessions, no alcohol. All the bands all met up. Once the Beatles recorded Sgt. Pepper, then everything got a bit crazy because nobody could take that type of show out on the road and play to an audience. And then the onset of the discos didn't help the live bands at all, really. Guitar solos got longer, bands got louder, wanted bigger equipment, drummers got crazier.
One of the reasons for the increase in youth culture during the 60s was undoubtedly the university. During the decade, it doubled its numbers of students. And here, just a stone's throw away from the old art school and the institute, now being turned into the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, is a pub that's well and truly on the tourist map, The Crack. It was here that a young John Lennon and Stu Sutcliffe were tempted by a swift half or two. However, the city fathers had more sober thoughts on their minds, improving the area's roads. traffic was getting more and more congested on both sides of the Mersey, and plans were drawn up to link city planning with solutions to transportation problems. The Merseyside Passenger Transport Executive was set up to improve and coordinate local transportation throughout the area. In June 1965, Parliament approved a £4 million scheme to improve the approaches to the tunnel. And as this rare helicopter footage shows, work was well underway on the area's motorways. The airport too was preparing itself for an increase in traffic. In 1966, the same year that the Hawker Harrier jump jet was launched, the Duke of Edinburgh opened and piloted the first aircraft to use the new 7,500-foot runway at Speke. Recognised as one of the most advanced runways in Europe, it was another clear sign that the rest of the world looked to Liverpool when they wanted to trade with Britain. Jaguar had not long since launched their 155 miles per hour sports car, the E-Type. And if you were rich enough, you could pick one up for a massive £2,196. But if that was a little out of your budget, Speke was also home for the Standard Triumph motor car factory, which was working flat out when the Prime Minister took a guided tour. Dr. Zhivago, starring Omar Sharif, was breaking all the box office records at the cinema, whilst on the small screen everyone was glued to Warren Mitchell as Alf Garnett in Till Death Us Do Part. And hours of entertainment could be found here at the Wizard's Den, one of Liverpool's oldest and best-loved shops, which sold every joke known to man. Talking of shops, here are some of the bargains that could be picked up in the high street. Manwed could centrally heat your home for just 49 guineas. A 19-inch TV in teak cabinet was 78 guineas. Bebington Motors of Birkenhead, Liverpool and Queensferry were offering a Fiat van for £380. Austin House on Hanover Street had an 1100 for £592. A Cambridge at £720 and a Mini for just £447. A GT 305 Eccles Caravan was only £285, and just look at these American Express holidays. How's about 15 days in Italy for 26.5 guineas? Samsung cameras on Bold Street had the world's most advanced camera, the Polaroid 100 Automatic, for £114, 12 and 6. Christmas spirit flowed freely with price tags like 19 and 6 for a gay, sparkling Muscatel, or La Flora Blanche for 15 and 9. And following the financial crisis in Bonn at the end of the decade, there was outcry when the Chancellor announced that cigarettes would go up to 3 and 5 for 20, and petrol 4 and 4 a gallon. A two-bedroom luxury flat in Wallasey with views of the sea and Snowdonia was £4,250, or £2,750 in Upton. On the pitch, it was a marvellous decade for both the Merseyside teams. The rivalry was as strong as ever, but as always, with good humour. Here, Gordon West is presented with a handbag by a member of the Cop after he'd blown them a kiss. West wasn't pleased. It didn't match his gloves. The Roll of Honours shows just how much Liverpool and Everton dominated British soccer. The 1962-63 season, Everton were league champions. 63-64, it was Liverpool's turn. They had to run around the pitch with a cardboard cutout of the Cup. They went on the following year to win the FA Cup, and in the 65-66 season, Liverpool were champions again, with Everton winning the FA Cup. And in 69-70, during the last match of the season, Everton lifted the title.
Well, I'd watched Everton from a lad, 1946, right up to 1916. They'd never won anything, so I wasn't an Evertonian because Everton were winning. They never won nothing till 1963. But I was born an Evertonian, and I was born in Everton, Liverpool 5, in the district of Everton, at the best half where they had bay windows on the houses. But we still went to see Liverpool on the other Saturday that we never seen Everton. But 1963 was my heyday, and 1966. Alec Young, Vernon, all the stars, Jimmy Gabriel, great. All the class players we had, footballers, very different to today. And then we won the cup in '66, and boy, I come out of Wembley that day, I tell you, I won some money. I had Liverpool win the league 5-2, Everton to win the cup 14-1, up and down and a pound double. And I come out of there with some money. That Derek Temple, I tell you, boy, he put the central heating in my house. But the other highlight was Liverpool winning the league. And Liverpool won the cup the year before, and I've seen that. But in '66, after Everton had won the FA Cup, think of England. England won the World Cup. What more do you want in the '60s? Fantastic.
In the 60s, I just couldn't wait for Saturday to come. In fact, none of my mates could. Saturday was such a special day to us because football was so important in our lives. I mean, of course, we're all young fellas, none of us had cars, but even that was an advantage because we'd go to the match on foot, and of course that meant going to boozers that we were obviously well known in. The Albert at the back of the Cop was one, obviously. The Salisbury, and of course the Blues, they went to the Blue House and, you know, pubs down by Goodison, and that was all part of the day. And it was so exciting because for the first time, and I'm talking about Reds and Blues now, for the first time we both had teams we could be proud of. I mean, they had Addy Catterick as manager, and of course we've been blessed. Shanks had arrived at the start of the 60s and given us this wonderful team, and it was such an incredible thing to get up on a Saturday morning and the clock started to tick on your Saturday, and what you knew was going to be full of passion and glory, and of course in Liverpool's case almost always a home win. In fact, when I look back to the 60s now, it wasn't so much like going to a football ground, it was more like going to a shrine.
And it's a very good morning from your local radio station, Radio Merseyside.
Station boss is 34-year-old Michael Hancock, a former BBC newsman. I asked him what problems he faced getting the station ready.
Well, our work, and I suppose our problems, although challenge is a better word, began way back in May, and it may seem a long time ago, but I've never known a summer go so quickly. Because the first thing we had to do was recruit the staff and then train them. And in training the staff in local radio, what we're doing is creating a complete new radio animal, a man who can do absolutely everything.
The BBC decided that music was playing a greater role in everyday life, so they set up 8 experimental local radio stations. Radio Merseyside left the other 7 for dead. Mind you, it had a few problems in the beginning.
I think I'm right in saying they had people on land, sea and air on the opening day. They had someone on land at the pier head, they had someone out on the ferry boat, they had someone at the top of St John's Beacon. They queued in the first outside broadcast, top of St John's Beacon. Over we go to our reporter. Sss. Well, I'm sorry, let's go over to so-and-so on the ferry boat. Sss. Over to the third reporter. Disaster, really. That one's gone down in the history books, the opening day of Radio Merseyside, where they couldn't even get a signal from the top of St John's Beacon, the major landmark in the city centre.
We're not a replacement for the Pirates. They did an entirely different job, a job that Radio 1 is now doing, and local radio is about local people and events, and it's a different form of communication. But of course we will have some pop music, but it'll be local, good pop music. We've got a programme called Top 10 on Merseyside, which we can assure you will be a month ahead of the national taste at least.
When Radio Merseyside began, it didn't have its own newsroom. I think there was one news producer or news editor. So the news service was provided by the Liverpool Echo, and when the journalists at the Echo wrote their stories for the paper, they would write the top copy, and then what's called technically the carbon copy, would be kept probably on a spike or in a file. And at the end of the day,